Hello everybody, Carpo this morning here, and I'd like to read you this paper I wrote. It's just a few pages, and I was trying to get down some ideas that I have, and I get my point across much better in writing than I do with just speaking, but I've always left my videos open-ended and try not to plan anything because I allow myself to speak subconsciously in a way through my thoughts. And I gain a lot more from making videos when I just speak randomly. But with that said, I'd like to read this little paper I wrote about the silliness of humanity. We're all a little bit loopy, all a little critical, all a little cynical, all a bit stubborn in our own ways. I've been accused of being a religious nut by atheists. I have also been accused of being an atheist by religious nuts. The ongoing battle between science and religion has no place in my life, as far as taking sides. I am open enough to admit science cannot answer all of our questions, yet honest enough with myself to realize that religion cannot answer them either, at least not to my satisfaction. For many, this problem has led them to New Age practices, for lack of a better term. Old formulas, revisited, repackaged, and repeated. Many of them create a rich life for the person, giving them hope and happiness, something often in short supply. But often there is a negative side to it, such as when the person becomes so convinced that they know that one truth that they become dismissive of all others' ideas, even ridiculing science. I've been accused of being uneducated by scientists. I've also been accused of being overeducated by those opposed to science. I've been told that I read too many books, and that I haven't read enough. The extreme views from both sides are the very thing that keeps me focused on balance of thought. Nothing is as simple as right and wrong when it is dissected carefully. All sides want to think that they have it figured out. It's in our nature. But when one leans too far in one direction, they are bound to fall over. If one side was actually complete in their truth, it would be observable in their behavior and lifestyle. One of the biggest signs to me that someone lacks conviction in their heart is when they defend their point with hubris and arrogance. Not always. Sometimes it is due to neuroplasticity, or the way that our brains wire according to how we perceive the world. We really do program ourselves by behavior and belief, and begin seeing patterns that we intend to see. We wire ourselves. This is why people can believe something so intensely, even in the light of evidence to the contrary. We are wired to ignore things that may conflict with what we think we know. It is something we are either born with or develop over years. Breaking the paradigm is harder than just changing your mind. It's a process, like everything else. It takes careful analysis of our intentions, our thoughts, and our actions. Over time, one is able to see their true nature and act in order to improve upon it. This is integrity. But integrity for the average person often involves assimilation into a society devoid of self-reflection. We have made self-awareness a selling point, not a way of life. Society celebrates diversity so long as it conforms to the standards. We all want to be respected by our peers, whether we admit it or not. To think otherwise would be a lack of integration. But as the person reflects more and more, he finds himself often alone in his beliefs and convictions, and separates himself from those with lesser values, as he sees. Or at least, that's how it appears at first. Over a lifetime of searching, a person can convince himself that he has finally found that one truth, and that all else is merely illusion. This is where we lose touch with one another. To me, this shows that not just a belief in religion, but even a belief of righteous values can drive a person to a superiority complex. We are hardwired to find our tribe, and no matter how independent we may feel we are, we need each other to survive. So as we grow, our peer groups get smaller and smaller until we are left more or less alone in our ideals. This is where it gets scary. Because no matter how right we may be, if the idea is lost to the masses, it needs to be reformulated. So many great ideas about how to live have been presented, but without the people to implement it and the education to preserve it, we fall back out of grace. So it's a societal issue as much as a personal plight. As a species, we will never attain a higher state of mind if we cannot show others why to change their thinking. Leading by example is only useful if the observed result is one people can use. Merely telling a person, "You will be happier if you believe or do X," will never suffice. Beliefs and ideals cannot be forced on another, whether out of fear of hell, fear of imprisonment, or fear of death. The will of man must be honed, developed, and cannot be broken when a man is true of heart. So religious leaders, gurus, teachers, idealists, and truth seekers alike, let us use our past failings to develop an understanding, remove the barriers, and create a better reality now, so as the children of our future, they will not remember us as the age of arrogance. I plan to extend that a little longer, but it conveys the message that I needed to convey. And when I write these things down, it's important for me to look back through my journals and see the state of mind that I was in at a particular time. Now, for those who don't keep journals or notes, you may look back on your past and create a skewed view of what we're actually thinking at one time. For example, if you have an idea that later in life you realize was wrong, often the mind's defense for that is just to block it out. We block out negative events in our lives. We block out when we were wrong. That's our own programming, our own natural. It's the neuroplasticity that I mentioned is the way that the brain and the neurons fire and wire themselves according to how we behave and perceive the world. And this is why I'm very cautious. And I dabble in many things, but I'm very cautious about going full speed into one thing, because once you do that, you've opened yourself up to fool yourself if you're not careful. And I see that there's a lot to be learned from each other. And what I meant in that, one of the most important parts that I wrote there, I think, in my opinion, was that, we can't force anything upon another unless, or should I say, we'll never convince another that our lifestyle is the right one as long as we're not living a good life. For example, there are many Christians out there who will say, being a Christian is the solution, the answer. But then you see Christians with the same divorce rates, with the same the same problems that everyone else has, the same questions, the same defensiveness and hostility. And it makes a person see, when a person looks at that, they say, well, what am I gaining from joining your religion? Because it doesn't seem like you're happy. This goes along with what I've, often people who tell you to be happy, or counselors, or people who are trying to sell you a product that's so great that it'll make your life so much better, you can see that their lives aren't so great. And this is, of course, just a surface view, but that's often the best we have. It's just to see, does a person really appear happy in this? And how much are they trying to convince us that what they believe is true? And is that based on a real conviction in what they believe, or is it based on trying to get others to join that echo chamber to reinforce the belief? No belief system started out with a large group of people. Every belief system started with a couple people. And over time, by reinforcing each other's beliefs, these things can grow and grow and grow. And when I observe it from a distance, I see how the scientific community is reinforcing each other. Arrogance and hubris towards anybody who says anything that may be related to something spiritual or anything outside of the material paradigm. And even though I'm an open-minded person, and I'm not a religious person, I love science and I love spirituality, if you will, although I hate that term. But trying to figure out what it's all about, bringing it all together. And I think that a lot of the spiritual type folks are trying to abandon the material world. And a lot of the material type folks are trying to completely abandon any type of spirituality. And somewhere out there, there's an answer to our problems, but I don't see us finding it anytime soon, as long as we have this belief that somebody else is wrong and that we're right. Now, all of that said, sometimes one side is right and the other side is wrong. And this is where it becomes kind of a clouded issue, because one side says I am right and you're wrong, the other side says I am right and you're wrong, and there's no evidence to prove or disprove. And when you break things down and analyze them, I've analyzed it from the point of view of an atheist or a religious nut, someone from both sides, to say, how would this person view the other side? From a religious person, and when I say religious nut, I just mean someone who's not somebody who is a religious person, but someone who is so fervently into it and believe everything literally and everybody else is wrong. I have been, whenever I mention anything even slightly spiritual to an atheist, I become accused of being a God freak. So, hold on. So that's that. Gotta go. Peace.